But to report in the Sydney Morning Herald today that Gen Z feel like they are losing the opportunity to find love. They are abandoning, so says the headline, the idea of love because the window is closing. They're getting too old now and feeling like, well, my parents were getting married and having kids at this point in their life, and where am I? I don't have a house to my name. I've barely finished my university degree. And I don't have anyone to date. They're feeling a bit hopeless and helpless. Annabelle King was quoted in the Sydney Morning Herald. She's 27, saying, I feel like I just finished school, went to university, got a professional job, and then it was just like, bam, everyone else has gotten ahead and I'm still here. Hold on, I've got no prospects. I look at this timeline, I'm turning 28 this year. I'm like, well, hold on, I also have a body clock to work with. It's freaked me out so much that I am freezing my eggs. Roger Lang, 23, also said, finding something that you like is kind of exhausting, somebody I should say, that you like is kind of exhausting, and then for them to like you back is also a process. It's a lot. Now, Roger, that's how dating has always worked, I hate to tell you. But there is one major difference in the dating game these days, and that is, of course, dating apps. I don't know if you've been to a pub or a restaurant or a bar or anything recently. People don't talk to each other anymore. They don't bowl up to someone in a bar and say, can I buy you a drink and have a chat? They'll actually sit in a bar on dating apps, swiping away, you know, blokes will do it, while girls are sitting at the other table doing exactly the same thing. And they look at you like you're some sort of Martian who's come from another planet if you dare to go and approach them in person. I fear that dating apps have done to dating what social media has done to socialisation. It is an extension of the loneliness epidemic. We live in a world where we are more connected than ever in some ways, and yet we have grown further apart than we have ever been. Combine that with a lifestyle that now says that, you know, you must go to university at all costs and keep studying and whatever. You don't leave home now until your late 20s in many cases because you can't afford to buy a house. You're not really living a lifestyle that is conducive to finding a long-term partner. Sure, you might be able to go and date a bit and hang out every now and again, but it's not the sort of circumstance where you can see a vision of buying a house together and having kids and a life and all that sort of thing. So it seems to make sense that we would end up in this position where Gen Z's like, oh, I just can't do it anymore.
So we're talking about young people aged between 28 and 33, more than half of whom say they have never had a real relationship in their life. These are people 28 to 33-year-olds, and of course, most of their parents were well and truly married and starting families by that age. And it has massive effects for society. You've got declining birth rates, so clearly this is not good for populating the country. You get social isolation, as you mentioned, Caleb, which then has mental health effects. That's going to cost a mozza in terms of public health. And then you've got delayed economic development because if you're not partnering up, you're not having children, you're not buying a home, you're not settling down and developing that equity. And so the inability of young people to find partners has long-term effects for all of society.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there are a few things going on here. I think one of the big challenges for young people is they do not know how to behave. There is a massive mismatch between young men and young women. Like, they just don't talk to each other anymore. They don't socialise together. There is no standard etiquette for how to date. And because we've torn down all of these social boundaries, all of these manners that traditionally guided the way you date, you take someone out, you pay for dinner, you drop her home, none of that happens anymore. And so young people don't know how to interact with each other. So they're just left swiping with dating apps. But the problem with dating apps is they then treat every human as basically a transactional object that has to meet your criteria for what you're looking for. And if they're not good enough, well, swipe right or left, whichever one it is, and keep looking. And that's what one of these psychologists who was quoted in the article said about dating apps. She said, people constantly think that love is disposable, that the grass is going to be greener. They're always looking to be someone at the next swipe or online. It creates this sense of almost like an Uber Eats of romantic relationships, where many people tend to tie their bonds loosely because they're prepared to unravel them quickly so they can move on to the next person. And that's the fundamental thing. If you see relationships as about yourself and meeting your own needs and finding the best partner to enhance your life, then you're never going to have a fulfilling relationship, even if you do find someone that meets all your criteria. It has to be about self-sacrifice, commitment, and loyalty, which is the opposite of the hedonistic, selfish narrative that Gen Z has been told all their life.
But it also avoids one of the major determinants of whether you want to date someone, which is beyond the looks, what their personality is like, or perhaps other attributes that they have. Because, you know, I know men tend to be more visual and women tend to be more oral. That's a biological fact. And so there are certain things that you can overcome if you're not the best looking fella in the world, and I can admit that I'm not, if you have other attributes that someone might find attractive. And so you might initially on a dating app go, oh, that doesn't really look like the sort of person I'm attracted to. But if you met them in a room and had a chat with them, you might go, they're the funniest person I've ever met in my life. And so you miss those opportunities to have those sorts of interactions and connections. And so you're dismissing possible opportunities on the basis of looks alone, which is quite sad.
The other issues are ones that you mentioned. You've got major lifestyle choices now where people pursue an academic degree first, and that's their focus. And we know that most young people try 2 or 3 different degrees before they finally settle on one. So you're chewing up valuable time there. Then people want to get their career established and be financially independent because they're expecting the relationship's not going to last, so they want to be financially independent. So that's your lifestyle issues. Then you've got cultural issues where we have this prolonged adolescence now where you're in your early 20s, you're still living at home with no expectation that you'll move out. Cost of living factors in there. So the whole window for where you're looking for a serious relationship is getting pushed further and further back. And that's got to be problematic as well.
Exactly. And if you actually look at birth rates within marriages, they've stayed roughly steady over the last 50 years. People who are married are still having the same number of kids, roughly, that they were before. But the massive drop has come from the rise in singleness. Because if you're going to have children, well, step number 1 is finding someone to have children with. And if that is not happening, then people won't have children, and that is going to compound so many of the economic and social problems that we already have in Australia.